Hello.
Yes, Zariel,
hello, yes.
how are you?
Good to you. Hello, Zariel.
Happy Friday, gentlemen.
Happy Friday.
Quick, a few bullet points that I really like to get through. First of all, may the Lord have mercy on his soul, on Prince Philip's soul, because I was reading through some books the other day, and I don't remember which one, but it was an opening comment that he had written. It was a foreword where he was writing about if he was reincarnated. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. I did try to pull something up in Google, and it was the quote said, "In the event that I'm reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute to something to solving overpopulation." I found actually quite, and it was not only in the book that he forwarded, but also in a German interview. I found it quite astonishing that the Duke of Edinburgh would actually say something or have something written like that. But please feel free to search in Google for it. Very, very interesting quote. Second,
very interesting.
The diversion policy, the tactics that are happening right now, I think it is a diversion from something. I don't know what, whether it be Hunter Biden, the von der Leyen mess up in Turkey, or the coup in Turkey, the alleged coup in Jordania, Nord Stream 2. So much is happening right now. But what I've spoken to you gentlemen about quite a few times is the buildup of the NATO forces in Eastern Europe. I asked you about the Defender Europe 21 a couple of weeks ago, telling you about how many troops there are and stuff like that. I just heard that they actually have requested passage through the Bosporus in sending so the United States or NATO, sending 2 naval ships through the Bosporus towards the Black Sea. This is very recent information that I just got from RT. So they are. NATO is literally building up a stronger NATO in the European arena. They say it's an exercise which they have done quite a few times, but they're constantly. I'm hearing from the Western media. They're constantly saying the Russian aggression, and it's always the Russians being aggressive while they are having this Eastern expansion. Now, my first question would be, how in God's name can the United States or or NATO accuse Russia of any aggressions or provocation when they are the ones moving towards the east, and Russia is actually just moving within their borders in a defensive posture? I mean, and why is no one talking about this hypocrisy in any other media?
Let me give a real quick answer, Alexander, for my end. We're trying to talk about it, Zariel, but YouTube shadow bans us, and they don't promote our videos. And the mainstream media, they prop up and they show their videos everywhere, and they're talking, different than us. So that's one quick answer for my end, Alexander.
But Zariel is absolutely right. I mean, the Russians, as they pointed out repeatedly, are redeploying their troops within their own borders, on their own territory, and this is supposedly a threat. The United States sends ships into the Black Sea, which is, of course, in Russia's naval backyard, and that is not a threat. And this sort of strange language goes on all the time. I mean, it's a constant theme that always what the Russians do is aggressive, even when it's obviously defensive, and always what we do is defensive, even when it is extremely provocative, and in most terms and most respects, highly aggressive. But there we are. That is the kind of information space that we all inhabit if we live in the West. That is the reality of this. Just to say very quickly on the point about the 2 warships going to the Black Sea, the NATO is repeatedly been sending ships into the Black Sea. The Russians keep very close watch on them. They have overwhelming striking power if they need to in the Black Sea. So the presence of these naval forces in the Black Sea is actually, I think, more of symbolic significance than anything else. There's been a really interesting study. If you go onto the RT website, it's written by Scott Ritter, and its title is Ukraine's NATO Fantasy is a Suicide Pill in Disguise. Military action by the alliance against pro-Russian forces would be crushed. And Scott Ritter, who has a military background, which, let me repeat again, I don't, goes into a great and very detailed discussion as to the balance of forces in Ukraine and on Russia's western borders. And he points out that any NATO force sent to Ukraine would be comprehensively outmatched by the Russians, and any air force, aviation, aircraft that the United States were to send there, including its most sophisticated fighters, the F-22 and the F-35, would encounter a Russian air defense system, which is both extremely advanced and which has been developed in a way that is specifically intended to counter those fighters and those aircraft, and which has been fine-tuned to do it, and operating against which US pilots barely train. So that's all by Scott Ritter. And I presume that he knows what he's talking about, and it seems convincing to me. So we have all these moves of troops. We've had this big NATO exercise, Europe Defender 2021. We have the ships moved into the Black Sea. It all looks very impressive, but it's all very hollow at the end of the day. But the danger is, if you start taking these steps, there are some people in Kiev who may take it seriously. And they may say, well, if the US is moving ships through the Bosphorus and into the Black Sea, and if the United States is engaging in all these exercises in Europe, and if NATO is making all these statements, then that must mean that they're really going to stand behind us. And that makes it all meaningful, at which point we can take certain risks in eastern Ukraine, which left to ourselves, we might not take. That is what makes the situation so dangerous, and what makes the absence of political leadership, strong political leadership in Washington, Brussels, and Kiev so dangerous also, because it makes it far more likely that miscalculations will take place, and that the more demented, if you like, will take charge in a dangerous situation like this. Quickly, on the subject of Prince Philip and being reincarnated as a virus, it's the kind of crazy thing he did say from time to time. I often think my mother, who met him, thought that he talked in this way from time to time, as a way of expressing his deep frustration at the fact that he wasn't able to make any real decisions in his life, and that his ambitions were constantly thwarted. That's not by any means to excuse those kind of comments. It's simply to explain them.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. My next question would be, gentlemen, Dr. Michael Yeadon. I don't know if you're familiar with this name.
No,
okay,
not
Dr.
me.
Michael Yeadon is the ex-vice president of Pfizer, an expert on respiratory diseases and vaccines. Mm. He has been very recently, popping up in different publishing platforms, which I have been following. In corroboration, or sorry, pardon my English, in connection with Dr. Van den Bosche and Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Selling, they have all been expressing their
Be careful with your word choice.
Yeah.
YouTube is listening.
Wording that you don't this isn't blocked or flagged, but they have been expressing their professional opinions and on this topic, on this disease topic, if you would. And that's also been, I mean, these gentlemen have been in their fields for well over decades, and nothing is being spoken about them either.
Yeah,
it's very that they're being banned. It's literally digitally blocked. Of course, we know who's doing it, but still, the alternative press is not that small anymore.
It's true, but we are under enormous constraints on what we
just to give an example. Just to give an example on the call-in channel that we tried to spin out, Zariel, to everyone's listening. We had a caller, and they mentioned the name of the Russian shot, and we got knocked down with strikes. I mean, just for the mere mention of the name. So I mean, we have our alt-tech platforms, the Odysseys and the Rumbles, but when it comes to big tech, at this point, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, we're getting to the point, Zario, where we can't even mention the name of the actual companies or the countries that produce these remedies. Yes. We can't even say, we have to choose our words. I'm using remedy, I'm using shot. Yeah. I mean, we're at that point.
I understand. And as I said, is really he was the ex-vice president of this company, so he knows what he's talking about.
They deplatformed the president of the United States.
So correct. Exactly.
The logical solution to that is to form a new type of broadcasting service, a different YT, if you please, circumvent this digital blocking.
People are trying, and it's
very hard.
It's hard.
Gab.
Yeah. Look, they've gone after them hard too. I mean, what I understand, Gab has been denied bank access to 4 or 5 different banks in the last 3 months. That's how bad it is. I mean, they won't even let them bank, not open up a website, open up a bank account.
Unbelievable. My last question or comment, gentlemen. I don't know if you've also been following this, but churches worldwide have starting to be closed by governments. Canada, for example, the United States. I have noticed UK actually is a very recent victim of this clown world, as it was spoken earlier on. I'm wondering if the EU is next, and it's a question for Alexander: is that constitutionally even legal? I thought the separation between church and states was pretty much the constitutional ground on which the nations were formed.
Indeed so, and I would add, and I'm speaking off the top of my memory rather, but I seem to remember that the European Convention on Human Rights, for example, actually specifically says that there should be protection of the freedom for worship. So closing down churches and preventing people from conducting religious services is a violation of human rights. I'm, reasonably sure that is the case, and it's happening in many places, not just in Europe, obviously, but in many places also, the United States, all sorts of places around the world. Canada indeed. And it may be unconstitutional, but it's also, I'm sure, contrary to human rights law, and yet it is taking place, and there seems to be very little objection to it because that's the nature of the times in which we live. So I think it's illegal. I think it's contrary to human rights. It's probably contrary to constitutional law in many countries. Your point about separation of church and state is well taken, but it is happening, and it is the reality of the times in which we live.
Yeah. Gentlemen, when are you going into politics?
Me? Well, I made it. Well, in my case, I made a decision long ago that I wouldn't go into politics. I was actually offered the opportunity and I declined it. There were personal reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into, but it just wasn't me.
Alex, what about you?
Oh, the only place I'm looking forward to go is to get back on the road to travel. That's it. I'll get into crypto. That I'm getting into, but not politics. All right. Thank you, Zariel.
Here we go. Can I just say Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights contains a provision about everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. So there it is. It's actually that this right includes freedom to change his religion and also the right to manifest his religion or belief in worship. So there we are. Article 9.1 of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's a while since I saw it, but it is in fact clearly set out as a right within the European Convention on Human Rights, and it's one which is being violated.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Zariel. Great comments, great question.
Have a great weekend. Bye, gentlemen.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.